Boy, you know you make me float. Boy, you really get me high. Ooh, I feel like doing it's you.
Hello, friends. We are back. We're Black and Curious. I am Candrin.
What's up? What's up? It is your girl Deja, and my eye is watering. But how y'all
Oh
doing?
dear.
Of
No bueno. Are you drinking?
course. So today's cocktail is I guess it's like a tequila sunrise, technically.
Mm.
Because I have a new tequila that I bought for the sangria brunch last week. Never mind, whatever, we can't get that out.
For the
So
sangria brunch
it
last.
has it has Tremana tequila, which is the Rocks tequila. It's actually really sweet. So it made a really good base for the sangria for the alcohol content. And then I just threw some fruit in here and some mango orange juice. So it's pretty good.
Sounds delicious. I am having a colorful mojito.
Ooh.
I love a mojito. So there's, of course, your typical mojito things in here.
Looks like you're giving a blackberry or blueberry vibe there.
Yeah, it's blackberry. And then because I already had it open and I needed to use it up, I have hibiscus, ginger beer, and a little splash of the pink grapefruit soda. So it's like a fruity but very round, florally moment. It's very good.
I don't need the recipe for that. Ooh, can we do this as like a make our cocktails live type of thing? That would be, I like that. That sounds really good.
Yeah. Well, it's the hibiscus ginger beer. Like I got it from Target, but as you know, I live in South Florida, so we be having all kinds of weird tropical stuff that the girls don't get in other places. So
I'm gonna have to run into my local Target and see what I can find.
So
But anywho, so this week's conversation, we are actually going to jump into emotional safety and what that looks like in your relationships. And when I would dare say, like, when you know that it's not there, like how you show up when it's not available to you. So what are your thoughts?
Well, let's just give a little background of where we came up with this idea. So if you watch our reality recaps, I think it was number 9. We talked about an incident that happened on Married at First Sight where one of the gentlemen
is this
gentleman is being kind. He actually locked his wife out of the house and like deadbolted the lock so that she was unable to get in. And it was like 1 a.m. and I'm still not clear on where she slept for the evening. I don't know if production put her up somewhere because it seemed like they were still around. She tried to get into the other couple's apartments, like she was knocking on their doors because they all live in the same apartment building as a part of the experiment.
COVID, I'm sure.
No, they've been doing this for a few seasons now.
Oh, really?
They have, and it's good.
I mean, it makes sense, but I would think that definitely, like with COVID, trying to minimize the amount of interaction.
Yeah, but at first they didn't. At first they had to pick either to move in with each other in one house or the other, or they had to pick a neutral location. So that was a whole thing. But in the last few seasons, they've been like introducing them together so that they have time to like get to know each other. And then they have the support system because the experts are clearly not always around, but they have the support system of each other. And then they've been putting them up in a neutral location. So there's no power grab involved in the entire situation. So anyways, but yeah, he locked her out, deadbolted the lock. And I had mentioned not only was it a physical safety concern because of, it was 1 a.m. And I shared a story, obviously, about the fact that I had been very accidentally locked out of a friend's house at like 2 a.m. and ended up sleeping in my car. And so physically it is unsafe, but emotionally it is also very like abusive and unsafe of like, whenever you get pissed off enough, you are going to completely not just like silent treatment me, which we can talk about that later,
Mhm.
but silent treatment me, but you're actually would physically lock me out of my home where I'm supposed to be safe. And
Right.
it was just a huge infraction to me. And then you had seen on, now you got me wanting to call it the wrong thing.
Listen, it's under the OWN umbrella. It is
Yes.
not put a ring on it, but that's what I keep calling it. It's
Yes. So
the
now
new
that's all this in
season.
my mind. It's
The new season of Ready for Love.
Ready
There you
for
go.
Love. Yes.
Yeah. So if you all are like us and are junkies for reality TV, then you also hopefully have caught the Ready for Love. It actually just started. So if you haven't started watching it yet, girl, get on it.
Please,
Sis.
because we will recap it. And the girls, you know, it's just getting started. We just
Hello.
episode 1. So
And that's close
now
to
is the
home for
time.
me. I could have been on the cast.
Yeah, now is the time.
Well, I would have had to audition, let me be honest. But anyway, so in the casting special, there's only the casting special in the first episode that are up right now.
Right.
So in the casting special, Sabrina, she talks about emotional safety and never having been given that in any of her relationships that made her feel safe enough to open up.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost feel like we need to define what emotional safety is.
Okay.
So that for those who are listening, who may not be aware of this terminology, know what it means.
Okay.
So for me, emotional safety is having the ability to just be free within my relationships, and that be intimate relationships or platonic or, you know, like familiar relationships, any of the sort. And having that freedom to know that you are always going to be loved, cared for, and looked out for. Like there's also for me a level of protection that's involved in emotional safety.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to always show up as a physical protection. This could be just like in the relationship that I have with Kendra, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, if someone was saying some shit about me that she did not like, she would definitely be like, okay, that's enough. Like, that's my friend. We're not going to do this here.
Yeah.
Not with me. You know what I mean? And like the same thing resides in me about my friend Kendra, obviously, because I love you. Yeah. But so like, that's a general sweeping, like definition for myself.
And I do want to say, let me add one more thing to that. Like, I totally agree with everything that you said, but also it's like, this ability, I don't say I'm complex. I just have a lot of interest and I can be all over the place sometimes. Yes. So, emotional safety means to me that you can accept me in all of what I am. And all of my whatever nuttiness or whatever, that you can accept me. And also that I can make mistakes without eternal punishment. Like, where I can be, and it doesn't even, for me, it's not necessarily like, oh, you have to forgive me. Like, I understand that that's a process for other people and like, it's not the same for everyone, but that there's leeway to make mistakes, to get things wrong and to do it better next time. And like, it's not going to be the end of the world.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I think that as it relates to us specifically talking about like romantic and intimate relationships, I think in the examples that we gave with the Ready to Love, Sabrina, and the couple from MAFS, which is Married at First Sight, they basically are, the MAFS was giving you a visual of what it looks like to not have that emotional safety and care for your partner. With Sabrina's case in Ready to Love, she just basically said what I was saying. Like, there was never a safety net where she felt like she could just blossom into that relationship and really fully give herself into it, for fear of, if I go in completely, then I can lose something.
Yeah. So, and I think there's a conversation, maybe a larger conversation we can have. I actually wrote it down, but the way I define emotional safety is really largely based on my upbringing. So for me, the two things that are super important to me is like the ability to be myself and the ability to be forgiven. And those two things, one existed for me and one kind of less so. And I'll explain. So my mom and we don't really hold grudges. And it was very much a situation where I would get in trouble, or she would, have to correct me however she chose to do that in that moment.
Mhm.
And we would have our time apart, a couple hours, and then we ate dinner together. Like, there wasn't silent treatment, and I think silent treatment is very violent.
Agreed.
And so there wasn't a silent treatment. So I expect that I'm able to make mistakes and that I don't have to be punished forever. Like, you have the conversation, you issue the punishment, or in this situation, you issue the, adjustment, and either you decide like you're done, or you don't need to be in a relationship with that person. But like, you can't
Love.
expect people to like be able to do things and never make mistakes. Like, that's not a fair guard, it's not a fair bar.
Mhm.
And then the other thing that's really important to me is the ability to be myself. And this is something that I don't think that I got very much growing up. But in having conversations with my mom, it's really because, Black people are like trying to prime their children for success. Like, and I think nowadays it's more acceptable and more talked about, like your child's personality type and factoring that in. But
Mhm.
when we were growing up, it was just like, no, like, you just go to school, you need to figure it out and get an education, and then you figure out what you want to do. And I don't always think that I was nurtured in the way that I needed to be nurtured. And so that's something I really look out for now. Like,
Yeah.
my creative instincts and like all the other instincts of things I had going on, because school always came very naturally to me. So it's
Mhm.
like the other things that I was very interested in and expressing very big interest in, like, I feel were kind of tamped down, and are things that I'm coming back to now as an adult. Like, I give you a prime example. My family came to visit me in Miami, and I threw a brunch for them. And you guys are gonna see we're gonna have brunches and stuff hopefully next year. Um,
I'm
but
excited about that.
yeah, me too. I love them. So I threw a brunch for them. I invited my friends over. My aunts, two of my aunts, and my mom were there. And I'm in the kitchen with my mom's sister, that aunt who I'm like super close to.
I love her.
Yes. And so she's like just watching me like fuss over everything. And she's like, "You really love this, don't you?" And I was like, "I really do." And it was something I always expressed to my mom, is like, I love to cook. I wanted to go to culinary school. Like, it was very much, I was very into it.
Mhm.
And it was like, no, you're smart. Go to go get, you said, didn't you say you want to be a lawyer? Like, nobody heard me say like, oh, I think maybe I want to cook or be a chef or go to culinary school or whatever. It was like, yeah, sure, cool. Like, didn't you
Like
say
parents.
one time back in the day you wanted to be a lawyer? Go do that. And so now I'm like maybe somebody should have tapped in a little bit better with the things that I was actually expressing an interest in. So that's really important to me now.
Yeah. I think too, like, so to that point of like, those showing up and showing interest in the things that you're expressing, that also is a form of emotional safety, right?
Absolutely.
When you are in relationship with somebody, and again, these, for those of you listening, this can go across all relationships. It doesn't have to be
Definitely.
romantic. But for me specifically, I'm speaking about a romantic situation. When you are in relationship with someone and they are so in tune to the things that you are wanting to do or that you're desiring, and then they show up in their way, though, right?
Yeah, of
They
course.
show up with said thing or acknowledging said thing. Like, that is so important.
So
And I
important.
think that is most often so overlooked. Like, people, I was going to say women, but people tend to love in the way that they want to receive love.
Hmm.
And because that is, it's different to train your brain to love someone in the way that they need to receive love.
Absolutely.
Um, and that's like another, potentially another conversation where we talk about like the 5 love languages, even though that gets on people's nerves. Like,
Mhm.
it's something to that science,
There is
like,
something to it.
um I have had in my intimate experiences, I've had a couple of men that really were in tune and were like, I think it was so simple as just asking about those things that I was aspiring to do.
Definitely.
And one memory that I have at the tip of my tongue right now is like before I went back to graduate school. And I was trying to get everything together, and it was going to take a longer process. I ended up going, but at the time that the guy I was seeing brought it up, like some things had kind of fallen through, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to really do that right now. And he was like, oh, but he asked about it initially. And so I explained what happened, and he was just kind of like, oh man, I'm sorry. I know how much you're really wanting to do that. And so he started to kind of like help me troubleshoot ways of getting into school, and doing so in the way that I wanted. And I remember thinking about it after the fact, like, damn, he really be listening. And that's not to say that like I've not ever had other people in my life that actually listen and, pay attention, but like,
no, it
those
means
type of things
different when it's in a romantic partnership. Like it feels different. Well, I mean, it can feel different that the person that you're, thinking about having a partnership with is paying attention to those things. And that's the person in most cases that you're going to spend most of your time with,
Yeah.
For that person to be the one like really pouring into you and taking seriously the things that you say is like super important.
I also feel too, like, I wonder if there is, and I'll throw this out to our audience as well, if there's anything to this idea of if you don't feel emotionally safe to open up to someone else, then that's a bag that you need to carry, in the sense of like, there's something there that you still need to work through. Because often that is like the take on it, like, you should be whole and complete in yourself. Like we've already had these conversations before. Hopefully by the time you guys see this, that other conversation will be up.
Yeah.
But like this idea that you should be whole and complete in yourself so that you can give love to somebody else. And when you're not whole and complete in yourself, then that's an indication there's still work to be done. And so I'm twofold, right? Two things can be right at the same time. I think that can be true, but I also think that sometimes there's an element of a lack of emotional safety created for you within a union with someone who's not supposed to be there. Does that make sense?
Say it one more time. I caught the end. I feel like I'm catching what you're saying, but go ahead. Say it again.
So the idea that two things can be true at the same time, right?
Right.
So you could totally be on a journey to getting into a space of wholeness where you can show up in love and be loved and, all is great. But there's also someone who can show up in a relationship and be all those things, but the person they are showing up with isn't creating that same level. They're not on your level. So that means that lack of emotional safety that is not present, basically the lack of it being there, is an indication that this is not someone that you should be in relationship with, or that you should be showing up and giving love to, because they are not capable of equally balancing you.
Right. I agree with that. Okay. And I think there's a third option too, like, and we've already talked about this too, so I'll link the video of the Jeannie, Maya, and Jeezy situation of like, there can be a situation where it's something that you're not necessarily maybe emotionally prepared to delve into, but you meet the right partner and they bring it out of you. And that's what we've talked about happening with the silent with you, of that you can meet somebody and they can help you to bring out different things that by providing that emotional safety, but also just by like triggering certain things in you to help you to, explore your things you hadn't felt safe about in the past.
Totally. And it's funny that you brought that up, because I think that I sent you so Jeannie actually did like some commentary, so to speak, around her choice. And so like, yeah. I actually have that here. I can play what she said, so you guys can hear it, and maybe potentially I can put the clip into the video. I don't know, but we'll see. But since we're here, I'll go ahead and do that really quickly. Let me open this up. That's so wild. Like, you literally brought that up and I was like, oh yeah.
I've never felt that the people who I thought I could trust I could actually trust. As a child, when you are taken from things that feel good and whole, it's hard to see anything being trustworthy moving forward. I realized that the reason why I didn't want to have kids is because that feeling when I was a kid was so real and so damaging, to the point that I'm 42 today, still dealing with trust issues. I think the reason why I've always said I don't want to have kids is because I didn't trust myself to actually protect somebody else from that. I'm like having a surreal moment right now.
Yeah.
I can totally pop this in. So if you guys are at this point in the video, I have put it in the video. But I appreciate that she got, because everybody was asking her, oh, you know, about the silence. You had all this commentary, like we did, of course. But I think that we also, you know, like we were making a little bit light of it, but at the same token, we were in support of her in the sense that like she just had to have the right person give her that emotional safety and give her the space to see something differently.
Absolutely.
And I love that she shared that.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it just went back to, you know, kind of like how we talked about that. Like he obviously created and modeled for her. And it seemed like, without going too far back into that, how we were talking about her previous husband not having kids, but like Jeezy has kids. So she was able to see a model for what a healthy parental child relationship looked like, and was like, wait a minute, actually, maybe I can do this, you know?
Right.
And that's an example of somebody, you know, providing an emotional safety that's able to help you heal from other things and come into your own.
Literally, she's a beautiful example of that.
Yeah.
To go from like a decade of saying, and on live television at that, saying, I don't want to have kids, I never want to have kids, to being in a union with someone where you also, I think she also had said that she never wanted to be married again. And then to be married again, and now having, like, you're in the position where you're bringing life into the world, which that was something you were adamantly against. Like, she's a beautiful representation of what having the right set of circumstances and space created in your life, and again, the whole conversation, emotional safety, presented to you in a way that unfolds and helps you to unfold the layers that you have built around you as it relates to you being open to seeing anything different. Like, I think that's dope.
And it's like it's a cycle, because she was safe, she was able to do that work, and then it also was able to bring life and like healing and life and all of that into her relationship. I think it's beautiful. And hearing her talk about it in her own words, I think is really beautiful. Is there certain things that you, and I pose this also to the audience, are there certain things that are red flags or like absolutely not for your emotional safety? Like you see that and you're like, oh no, like this does not feel good.
Prime example of that is the person that I made mention to. I may have said it on our podcast. If not, I've said it in conversation with you. Was that I was seeing someone who reminded me of my mother, and like the worst parts of my mom and how she shows up. And so I was like, hell to the fuck no. Like, no, we're not doing that. No, I'm good on you. Goodbye. I do not want this. And so like, for me, those things are lack of self-awareness, lack of self, like, and I know that sounds crazy, but like,
no, it doesn't.
People who just don't know, like, self-awareness is one thing, but like where you just don't even know who you are, and it's blaringly obvious that you don't know who you are, and so you're defining yourself by whichever way the wind blows. So if I blow due north, you going this way too. Like, hell no, I don't want that either.
Yeah, like you need somebody who's like grounded in who they are.
Yes. Because like Deja is who the hell Deja is. And I am growing and changing all the time, right? Because you never stop growing, you never stop changing, you never stop learning new shit, right? But at the same token, the core of who I am and the values that I hold are always present in whichever version of me, you know, that shows up as I age. So someone who don't have that, it's like self-confidence is probably more of what I'm thinking too when I'm saying like lack of self. And understandably, we all have our insecurities, and there can be things that, you know, like make you feel a little less than yourself. But like, if that is how you show up all the time, I don't want it. I feel you. I don't want it. I don't want to be the leader in my relationships. Because that does not create emotional safety for me either. Yeah. And I understand wholeheartedly that I have a very strong personality, and what I want to do is what I want to do, and what I don't want to do is what I don't want to do. Like, that's it. However, there have been people that I have met that can balance that strong personality and get me to do things that I was like, bitch, I'm not doing that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I don't know. What about you? What do you think?
I think one of my big things is how you handle conflict. Mm-hmm. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier about how me and my mom don't really hold grudges. I mean, we have at different times, but like for the most part, we don't hold grudges. But I am like a very low conflict, low drama. I don't like a lot of drama. I don't like a lot of conflict. Mm-hmm. I am very much everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Unless you're just completely wrong and disrespectful, I'm more often than not, I'm willing to agree and agree to disagree and move on. Mm-hmm. That's who I am as a person. So if conflict is very high, and if I ever notice within conflict a lot of silent treatment, that's gonna shut me down very quickly. Mm-hmm. I think the silent treatment is absolutely abusive. And I don't, and that's not to say, because I am a person who also needs time to process things, mm-hmm. but I will tell you, like, hey, I need a moment, or let's talk about this some other time. Like, let's put a pin in that and let's come back to it because I need a second. And I will still, you know, try to be cordial, or I will still engage you. I'm just not going to talk about that thing right now. Mm-hmm. But I don't like being shut out. I don't like being iced out like that. It bothers me. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Like, do not ignore me. Yeah. But I feel like that's Leo traits. We don't like to be ignored. Well. And especially to, like, you know, like if that's the intention, like you're intentionally ignoring me because you know that I don't like that shit. Yeah. Out of here. Red flag.
Yeah, I wasn't raised to deal with conflict that way. I don't like a lot of conflict and tension anyways. And so, yeah, just shutting down and not speaking to me is it is a huge problem for me. And it makes me feel very unsafe.
Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, there were points in my own experience where I did not necessarily have the language to say, okay, listen, I need a minute and I'm gonna come on back to this. I do now, right? But there were points where I was just like, I can't talk to you right now, but that's all that I got. That's all that you got from me. Because I didn't necessarily have the language to, like, again, to say like what it was that I need time to process. And so in those moments where you have to be silent, or in those moments where I was just silent and not communicating what all the need was, like my experiences with intimately with those who didn't necessarily understand that was like retaliation. Right. And like tit for tat.
That's what I mean.
And I'm like, this is not, so my fault for not having the language to express fully that I just needed a minute, but I was going to come back to this.
Right.
It's totally red flaggish that like that's childish behavior. So because
it's unhealthy, like it's not healthy in my opinion. And like I said, everybody's entitled to take some time to think about it, but when some time to think about it drags out days and days, and sometimes people, weeks. Like, come on, like, enough. Grow up, have
Mhm.
a conversation, and then decide what you want to do. But you can't just keep dragging stuff out like that. That's a problem for me.
Mhm.
That's a big problem for me. And like I said, I was not raised that way. My mother and I very much, well, I didn't resolve anything with her because, as a child, you are resolved with.
That part.
But
And the unfortunate piece is that as adults, at the big ages that we are, like your parents will, moms specifically, because my dad doesn't really do that. My dad be ready to talk it out. He don't want no fights.
yeah.
But like my mom, like recently we got into like a back and forth, and then I was just like, this is what's wrong with this family. You all have horrible communication. And so my mom was like, you have horrible communication. And I was like, actually, I don't. Actually, I have had years of tools and things to help me communicate what it is that I need and say and speak my mind and say what needs to be said so that we can move forward. You all never got that. So I understand that you all have horrible communication, but like, girl, this is crazy. My mom was so mad, but I was like, I'm not doing this. I'll talk to you later, girl.
Yeah. I definitely had to do that to my mom, but my mom's like super understanding and she's very receptive to the fact that she does it. She's receptive to the fact that she didn't do everything right. She doesn't do everything right. And I think I've said it before here. Like, I actually have to be careful because she takes it really close to heart. Like that I felt like I didn't get something that I needed as a kid. Like she's very sensitive about that and is like, I was just doing my best and like I just didn't want you to have to work so hard or worry so much and that kind of thing. So I'm careful about like the feedback that I give her. I think I'm all but done giving her feedback.
Only because the feedback happens when my mom started acting crazy, and I'm like I said with the communication thing, I'm like what are we doing here? Yeah, you don't want to have like, just because you don't like what's being said doesn't mean that the conversation is over.
Right. No, yeah, I get it. So, anyways, but yeah, I think a lot of emotional safety issues, and what you look for in emotional safety, it does come from how you were raised.
For sure.
It comes a lot from that. So yeah, drop down in the comments and tell us what matters for you as far as emotional safety. What are your biggest yeses and nos? Like, what do you look for in a emotionally safe environment?
What are your red flags, man? Like,
and what are
if you have things with your parents that you go through, like, talk to us about that too, because like, baby, she has been around the merry-go-round a time or two. So, but yeah, for sure, drop down in the comments and tell us what your experiences have been, or if you have more questions about the subject matter, like, let's have a whole conversation.
Yes. So that's all I got. You got anything else?
Nope. So that ends this week's convo.
All right. Follow us everywhere, like, comment, and subscribe, and we will talk to you next time.
All right.
Bye. Boy, you make me float. Boy, you really get me high.